You've got people that elected Donald Trump for a reason, right? They want to actually fix this immigration mess. They want to fix the inflation scenario. So these two things are happening simultaneously. And you had Tom Homan, who's a brave man because he went on MSNBC Morning Joe this morning, right? You got to give him some credit for that. That's like going into the lion's den. Not exactly a fun group, shall we say, over there. And he laid it out quite well. Here's Mr. Homan.
Look, the American people voted for this. American people voted for Donald Trump. This is number one issue. Vast majority of Americans want illegal aliens removed from this country, and it's done humanely. However, we got to remember this. There are millions of people standing in line, taking their tests, doing their background investigation, paying their fees to be part of the greatest nation on earth. They're sitting in the back seat while 10.5 million illegal aliens came to this border, enter this country illegally, which is a violation of law. There's right way and right way to come to this country legally. The people who came across, they call them asylum seekers, but you and I both know, if you look at the immigration court data, 9 out of 10 of those so-called asylum seekers will end up with an order removal. They overwhelm the system on purpose. Why? Because they know it's going to take 5, 7, 9 years to have a hearing, which they will lose, but now they have U.S. citizen kids. Now they own equities. Now there may be Democratic administration in power, which will award amnesty. They're playing the long game, but we're enforcing laws as enacted by Congress, which you are a member of. We're not making this up. We're enforcing laws on the books, including the Alien Enemies Act, which is an act created by Congress. We're simply using the laws on the books to make this country safe again.
Okay? And the Alien Enemies Act was held up by the Supreme Court on top of it all. So the people want this. This is what they voted for, and yet you've got the Democrats trying to stand in the way. And there's one guy who's even trying to impeach over this whole thing. Ben Ferguson, my friend, I've known him many, many years here. He appeared on Fox. He used to come on, I think, my CNBC show. That was rare to have a conservative on that. But anyway, here he is speaking, and he articulated it well. I want you to hear.
That's a pretty easy takeaway to make when you look at the contrast in these images. But I'm really struggling to understand, what is the motivation here for these members to go down and meet with these people and advocate to bring them back, even despite all of this evidence that we've seen come out? Why do they care about this one issue? Why do they want to make this person the sort of poster of their argument in particular?
Yeah. Look, you don't have a leader of the Democratic Party right now, so they're all jockeying for trying to get their moment in the sun. And this goes back to the basic theme. Orange man bad. We hate Donald Trump. He's terrible. How do we undermine Donald Trump? Oh, we're going to put out a story. And let's be honest, in the past, they've gotten away with these types of disinformation stories. They change the narrative. They act like an MS-13 gang member is not one. They then say he's a victim. They say he's being tortured. You put all these lies out there, and usually what happens? The media sells the lie. Many of them did in this case. And this is the first time I feel like this new media and conservatives and places like Fox News Channel are winning by just telling you the honest facts. Democrats...
I'm going to add to that. We're winning because we are being honest with you. Right? The spin... Tulsi Gabbard actually was looking into that. We'll bring you that story on Monday, but she released some documents this week which really show the effort to which the Biden administration was going through to undermine what actually is truth, right? Because they want to control the narrative. They are so desperate to control the narrative. In fact, his exit interview with USA Today, Susan Page, Biden said his biggest regret was that he didn't control the quote unquote misinformation enough. I'm like, buddy, I guess he thought it was misinformation. I'm like, buddy, hey, what do you think that was? The darn 51X spooks coming out about your son's laptop trying to pretend like that thing was actually a hoax from Russia when it was all real. Or what about how you wouldn't allow us to talk about the Wuhan virus coming from Wuhan, China, from that lab, right? We weren't allowed to talk about these things. And I kept saying at the time, when you strangle a society and do not allow for an open discussion and for a debate and for alternative facts. Remember when Kellyanne Conway got in trouble for that one? When you don't allow for somebody else to talk about anything else, you've totally ruined that society, and you've ruined any kind of faith and trust that the American people may have had it in you or with you. The one amazing thing about this administration, I will just say, there are many amazing things, but they are not willing to allow for this lack of transparency that was so evident in the Biden administration. Instead, you got cameras going all day long. He'll answer any question. He'll talk to anybody. And that is very different than anything we've seen before. And he is back, and he is back with a vengeance. In other words, he knows he's on a mission. I saw him there with Mrs. Marin, right, who lost her daughter. And you could feel the empathy, and you could feel the sense of purpose. And he was telling her, right, you've got a sense of purpose. Here it is.
Beautiful.
Call a dear friend.
She's a beautiful woman. She's been through hell. She's been through hell, right?
Oh, yes.
Your daughter's looking down proud of you. You know that. Just keep it going.
I know.
Keep it going.
It's like you said.
Stay with that one.
It's like you said, we have a purpose.
It's a purpose. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
She's proud of you.
It is a purpose, okay? It's a purpose. And so he feels this purpose. He feels her anguish, and he's committed. He's committed to doing what he feels is right, and he's going to tell you every step of the way exactly what he's doing. He's not going to allow for the misinformation, right? I mean, that's what this was. We saw a misinformation machine. I've told you about that. I almost said Holly, because a lot of these things are on my mind right now. Not Smith-Hawley, but the Smith-Mundt Act of 1948, which basically said, okay, taxpayer funds can go to propaganda that we're going to put overseas so that we can control the political regimes in all these various countries to the best of their ability, right? And that's sort of what the CIA was engaged in. And you had a leg up because, sure, the U.S. was all over radio and television and, of course, Hollywood and films. And so if you could control the narrative that way overseas, then you could control the political regimes that came into power. And that was advantageous because, let's face it, you didn't want to have to go to war every time you were going to have a fight over oil or this, that, or the other. And so we did a lot on the edges or around the margins to inflict our view of what quote unquote democracy was. You notice we only care about democracy in places that we care about, right? And we would push a certain narrative. But the Smith-Mundt Act of 1948 insisted that that could not be reversed on us. In other words, you couldn't use taxpayer funds to reverse the propaganda that you were pushing overseas in the name of democracy back here at home. But what happened? Obama, 2012, it went into effect in 2013 with the Defense Act, said, well, look, all these foreign actors can come over here and they can infiltrate our social media and they can put out a different narrative. And so we have to stop that. And so in stopping that, quote unquote, stopping that, they allowed for those funds, USAID, et cetera, to actually go to news organizations that had their international operations to use that back here at home and kind of have a giant psych-off. Right? So Americans, they saw through it. We saw through it. You wonder why countries all over the world kind of look at their governments like, And I said this would happen. I predicted it would happen. I always said, no one in Russia trusts no one in Russia trusts Putin. Okay? And you know why that is? Because they have manipulated the news cycle. And it's, state media. Well, what do you think went down with Biden? What do you think went down with Obama? I mean, it's partly where Trump came into office and then various circumstances. He was out in 2020, but you know what? He's back, and he's back, as I said, with a vengeance. And listen, this double standard on migrants thing, this is not going to fly. You can't say, oh, we just care about migrants, but we don't care about people like Patty Morin, who lost her daughter, or, we don't care about girls who have to swim in the pool with boys or change in the locker room with boys because this is not fair. By the way, what? I don't get it. Like, weren't they supposed to be the party for women? It's like they don't stand up for women at all. I mean, you've got people that are illegally in the country. You need law and order. Do you not? I mean, do you not? I'm looking at all your comments here. It's great to see you guys up and on this on a Friday afternoon ahead of Easter weekend. So thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Make sure that you subscribe if you haven't. Quick shout out again. I see you talking about oil prices. And Dom, what do you think? I mean, oil, it's come crashing down. We have some views on that. We've written a lot on it. in terms of oil. And look, I'm a big believer long-term in the U.S. economy, and it's hard for me to ever bet against it. But Don is a former options trader, so he's got probably a few, you get some S&P puts out there, I imagine, right now. Anyway, we look at this market and we look for opportunities at 76 Research. And just to give you an idea of some of our portfolios, things like Income Builder are really good right now because you have dividend plays in there, similar to inflation protection, where you have a lot of sort of raw materials, et cetera. Materials, financials, again, dividend plays, because if you're gonna see this market go down, you might as well get paid a little bit along the way. That's what my dad used to say, right? When he was investing in the 70s and 80s, he's like, you know what? I want a dividend along the way if I'm going to hold this thing. So that's why we created those portfolios. And then if you look at American Resilience, that's really designed to offer you some growth that's different than the growth that you would get in the S&P or the growth that you would get in triple Qs, meaning the NASDAQ. So take a look at that when you can, if you have some time over the weekend. 76portfolios.com.